This episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. Speaking Podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BREWtally and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is the returning Cody Quistad, guitarist of Wage War. This was a real fun, loose chat with Cody. Didn't have a whole lot to necessarily talk about because the record at the time of us talking wasn't coming out for a hot minute and had recently started the tour with Beartooth, which my wife and I had seen in Atlanta, as well as eventually going to see it at the end date here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I gotta say, it's really interesting, like having seen Wage War quite a bit over the last couple of years, over the last two and a half album cycles or so. It's been interesting to see kind of the growth of the band, really, and just kind of see them kind of going from that, first or second of four package tour band to kind of having a couple of singles that really pushed them, having really great sets at Sonic Temple, Louder Than Life and a few others, and just getting on really good tours that kind of really broke the band into a bigger stratosphere at this point. And Cody himself has actually been kind of doing the same with his songwriting, as you'll kind of hear us talking in this chat. He ends up talking about moving to Nashville, kind of being a part of just the songwriting. I don't want to call it a guild necessarily, but being kind of one of many songwriters who do things beyond just the band they're in. And, just kind of the career that you're able to kind of carve out for yourself at that point. And it's really interesting. I think I saw a comment recently and I kind of laughed at it, but I really agreed with it, and it was basically that Cody has one of the best clean singing live voices in the genre. And I kind of thought about it for a minute and I was like, yeah, I actually do really agree with that. And, I can think of a lot of different clean vocalists in bands, but I do think for as much as I've seen Cody, like I said, on these tours, kind of singing a lot of the sets and stuff like that, and even playing in different environments, his voice is always really, really good, like pretty spot on. And it's one of those where I think it's just an testament to the work he does, being a great vocalist, and just the care that he takes for his voice. It was funny, like I said, we got the last show here in Grand Rapids of that Wage War Beartooth tour, and at the end of Beartooth's set, a couple of times, I know Cody came out to do some guest vocals. I know Britton from Wage War came out and did a song, and it was really funny though because Cody came out, and I forget what song it was, but he came out to do a harsh vocal, and it was one of those things where it could have been just that's not necessarily Cody's bag, in his bag of tricks, I should say, but it was fun that you could tell that Cody was having fun doing it, that the Beartooth camp was having fun with it. I always strongly encourage, if you can, to go see one of the last dates of a tour, because the tour pranks and so forth are usually worth it. Speaking of worth it, I'm going to try a beer that a friend of mine got me. It is a co-op or coupe, I'm not entirely sure. Aleworks, it is a Hook Echo Hazy IPA. The can looks really interesting. It looks like if I were to have just made some random beer myself, have it in a very nondescript can, and then just wrote on what it was with Sharpie. So I don't necessarily know that this is indicative of how the beer is going to taste, but here we go. That's interesting. Actually, I'm going to take another sip. So what's interesting about it is you get this really, really like citrusy, sweet flavor in the front end of it, and then you get this like IPA kind of, the hazy IPA back end flavor, the kind of little bit of the bitterness and so forth. It's a really interesting beer. I'm going to have to look it up and kind of learn more about this brewery and so forth, but it's been sitting in my fridge for a while. It's one of the few 12-ounce cans I actually have, so it makes it easier to drink than a lot of these 16 to 32-ounce beers I have, where I'm like, do I really want to get into that one right now? And the answer is usually no. But speaking of something I do want to get into, let's get into my conversation with Cody, and I will talk to you all on the other side of it. Going to what, Virginia?
No, we're headed to Chicago, actually.
Chicago, that's right. Damn it, I forgot. I was gonna say, because I know so I went and actually saw you on my trip in Atlanta and got to finally go to the Masquerade, which awesome. Cool venue. Terrible sight lines though if you aren't like 6 foot something.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think. Yeah, I guess that one does have the second story, but yeah, you might be in a bad spot if you're not in the taller crowd.
I was not, so I stayed pretty much far back over by like where the merch area was, but still could see. But it was just like, it was funny because my wife and I were like, oh, let's try to like sneak our, like, not sneak is a bad word, but like try to get it up closer. And then you get to about probably 5 feet in front of the sound booth, like where the mixing guy is, and it was like another like 10, 15 degrees hotter, and I was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. I'll just listen.
I'll watch and listen from afar. And then we literally bought tickets for the Grand Rapids date here where I live.
Oh, amazing.
So now we'll actually get to see it this time, because the venue there has a little bit wider of a room, so you can actually see a little bit better everywhere.
Yeah, I don't think we've had it's like the 20 Monroe Live. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, now it's a casino around here bought it, or the name to it or something. I don't know what they've done. This will actually be my first show at the venue since they've changed names. So I don't know if they've changed anything else about the venue at all, but it's a really nice room. I think it's very similar actually to the Masquerade as far as like how it's kind of open floor and then you have the spots up above you. So
awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for it. It'll be the last show of the tour for us too. So
yeah, that was
party.
That was a weird one. Do you have any, I don't want to ruin the surprise necessarily. Do you have any tour pranks ready for last day of tour, ready and kind of getting geared up?
We do, but I really don't want to spoil it, but it will be worth staying through the entirety of the show for sure.
What has been one of your favorite end of tour pranks?
We don't really prank that much. I guess we've been pranked a couple times. There was one of the first tours we ever did. All of the bands got on stage while we were performing and pulled out a table, cereal and milk, and just ate cereal on stage while we were playing. So that was pretty funny. But we haven't really been a part of that many pranks.
I feel like that's always like, and I don't know if it's just maybe an antiquated exchange basically of tour pranking. Like usually there's kind of like, I hear of like the first day kind of like just bullshitting with people, and then there's always the last day of tour. Like I know my friend Mark from Nothing More, when they were on tour with Ghost, he was like, our last day we came out during their set in Ghostbusters outfits. And he goes, we thought it was funny, but I don't think the band necessarily understood it.
Yeah. I could see how that could go south for sure. I think one time, I don't remember either we put Vaseline on someone's van handles or they put it on ours. I don't remember. One of the two.
I think another good one I saw was my friends in Rivals. They were on tour with New Year's Day. They played the Stash here in town with New Year's Day, and they came out with all of their like trailers tires from New Year's Day, and just were like bouncing on them in the middle of the pit and the floor.
With New Year's Day's tires?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, that's a pretty adventurous prank, because that also would take a while to put them back on. Yeah,
that's how you burn a bridge right there.
They seem to take it all in stride, but I don't typically like doing like the normal press junket thing where I'm like, oh, so tell me about the new record and all those kind of things, because you're going to do a shitload of those if you haven't already. So this is more just a fun conversation, as it were. I was kind of surprised to not see you wearing your Hillians cut while you were on tour.
Yeah, I did that all last tour in 2019. So given the time of year, I just felt like it was probably more of a t-shirt show. I'm trying to think. You guys haven't announced a tour after this that I'm aware of, so we'll see a different iteration of it. Will you have a different one maybe that you'll wear, some new branded Hillians merch? I would like to. I'm trying to get Maddie to wear his on stage too.
Oh, he probably won't do that.
I'll get him to do it.
Well, it's like I had Maddie on a little while ago and just posted the episode, I think about 2 weeks ago now. And pretty much most of it was just talking about like, just kind of the interesting scene you guys literally have as neighbors, you guys all getting together in this sense of community, even outside of the musical sense of community that you guys all are a part of. And I know are you from Nashville, or did you move there too?
No, I moved there too. I'm from Florida.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was gonna say, I thought you were from like the Ocala area. Well, how have you found Nashville to be, especially since it seems to be where so many singer-songwriter artists and just creative people are all going, and just kind of this merging of creativity in such a small area?
Yeah, I moved there in 2018 for songwriting, and that is, and it's worked out for me, and I've been able to, secure a publishing deal, and, been able to be a part of a lot of great rides. And last year was honestly very helpful in that, because I got to be home so much. And then I found, a incredible community of people, Matt being one of the ones in there, my best friend since childhood, or since, being a kid, moved up there. I've got so many friends that have just become family to me. And that really makes it, you can live anywhere with a group of people like that, but it really just locks it in when it happens to be the place that I've always wanted to live. So
what is it about Nashville that's always inspired you to want to live there?
I think it's just the music base of it. My dad took my family on a work trip when I was probably like 12. And I just absolutely loved it. And I just haven't stopped talking about it since. And I was like, well, I need to get out of Ocala. And Nashville is definitely looking nice. So
my wife and I are going there in December. I haven't been in probably a good 12 or 15 years. So I'm excited to go and just kind of see how much has changed. Cause I know the time I went before that was doing like like the Grace, like the Memphis, Nashville kind of whole thing with my extended family, and doing like a big trip. But I was like 8 or 9. So it's like, can't really do anything. And I don't have much memories of it other than going to Graceland and staying in the Smoky Mountains in like an executive home for like a week. But beyond that, it's like when I last went, I was really surprised at just almost like it's like a southern Las Vegas, if I could kind of put a spin on it, where it's just like there's always something going on. The city doesn't seem to sleep. And I'm really excited to, now that I'm a little bit older, really kind of just explore the city and just kind of see like what it has to offer, an almost 40-year-old now at this point.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, they don't call it Nash Vegas for nothing.
Is that really a thing?
Oh yeah, Nash Vegas is they got T-shirts and everything.
Well, see, I thought I was being, in an innovator here, by being like, oh, it's like the Las Vegas of the South, and I guess I'm not.
And you are. I mean, yeah, that's a great point. You're just you're a little bit behind someone else's thought, but you had the brain that thought of it, and it is a profitable T-shirt company. So you just missed the mark by a couple of years.
Well, I will have to come up with a better, bigger slogan for Nashville for something down the road. But what are some fun things that, like, when you first went there, what are some really fun things that kind of gravitated you toward, exploring the city? Like, because at this point I love talking to people who are local somewhere and going
Right.
give me some places to go to check out some local flavor that's not a touristy spot.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on what you like to do. Obviously, Nashville's a drinking town, so there's a lot of places to drink if you're into that. A lot of cool Hall of Fame, Johnny Cash Museum. I know these are all touristy things, but they are some of the cooler things to me. There's a lot of great hiking around there. There's a lot of great places to kayak. We go to a place called the Duck River, a little bit south of Nashville, and that's where my crew kind of goes. And we have a great time out there. There's Percy Priest. You can rent pontoon boats and have a blast out there. As far as, bars and nightlife go, like, I'm not a big Broadway fan, which is just kind of one of those things that you adopt as you live there. Because, your friends come in town and they're like, oh, we want to go down Broadway. And you're just like, probably not, but I guess I'll go.
Is Broadway like the Nashville equivalent of like Bourbon Street?
Yeah, it's the Strip. I mean, it's great for music. It's just, it's great for music and drinking, but there's just always so many people. It just is a absolute chore to get down and then get out of there, and however you choose to do that. So I mean, there's a lot of great hangout spots in East Nashville. Crying Wolf is a great one. Pearl Diver is a great one. A lot of great food. Hot chicken, Hattie B's, Pepper Fire Princes. There's literally so much stuff.
It's funny. I was messaging with Maddie the other day because I was in Atlanta, like as I just said, was in Atlanta, and so I was making the comment about being at Hattie B's down there because it's the spot I always go to. But it's funny because like Atlanta is sort of my Nashville for you.
Yeah.
So like whenever I go, it's like, okay, I gotta hit this spot, and then like now we're getting to the point because like even Andrew from Ghost Inside was posting when they were playing, I think Blue Ridge Rock Fest or whatever that one was. That he was at a Cookout Burgers, and I was like, what's that? Like, had never heard of it. And he was like, oh dude, you got to go. And then as we landed and we're going to our Airbnb in Atlanta, like literally across the street was a Cookout. I was like, holy shit, dude, like look what's literally across the street from me. And he goes, okay, so like no lie, you got to go. This is what you get. Like, this is how you do it right. And it's just like, okay, like it's funny in talking to so many and befriending so many band people is like, you're just like, okay, dude, I'm in this area. What do I have to hit? What are the go-to spots to eat? Like, just because you all know you've put in the legwork for us, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Cookout riffs, by the way, you really got to do it to them there.
I didn't get to, sadly.
It's the most food you'll get for the smallest amount of money, guaranteed.
I mean, it looked good based on all the photos I saw. I waited in line for like 10 minutes when they were open, and no one even acknowledged me. And I was like, all right, well, I got a flight to catch, so I got to go.
Yeah, that definitely might happen at a Cookout for sure.
Well, good to know that my one and only experience, I guess, is almost on par with what you can expect there to a degree.
Yeah, it's kind of like maybe eating at like a Dick's Last Resort or what's those other ones, like a Primanti Bros or something.
What like it was kind of interesting, like I haven't seen you guys since you did the headline tour at the Intersection a couple years ago, and it feels like so much longer due to the pandemic, basically. Right. Allowing no one to play and going to no shows. But it was kind of interesting to see how well the new songs have gone over, because I personally don't really feel like the last record is so old that you shouldn't really still be supporting that. So I was surprised to see the couple songs in the set that are the new ones that people are just like already ready for it, already know the lyrics and everything. And it was just like, man, like you just don't really, I don't feel like you see that as much anymore, where the people are so excited about the new material. Like a lot of times it seems that's the quote unquote bathroom song. Like, has it been like that the whole tour for you guys?
Dude, it's been really cool. Pressure kind of got, screwed out of its time just because of, the pandemic. And, normally like album cycles run 14 to 16 months. We put out Pressure in August of 2019, and then Manic is coming out in October of 2021. So timetable wise, it's correct. But yeah,
Right.
support wise, like, there's a lot of great songs on Pressure that'll, never get the proper attention, whether it be, music videos or, radio or whatever it might be. Like, there's a lot of missed opportunities there. But, I think the name of the game is just always onward. And, as a band, we're always trying to get better and write better songs. And I feel like we really did all of that on the new album. So I was kind of the one leading the charge. I'm just like, new material. It's like, I had all this time to just like sit at home and write. And I was just like, it's like, oh, you guys think Pressure is good? Wait till you hear this. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like that's kind of an interesting thing. And, I just literally right before we did this one, did a chat with Marco from Sugar Cult. And, we're talking about 20 years of their first record, Start Static. And, we were kind of talking about how there's this whole concept of us as musicians, music fans, whatever, where we collect things, whether they be records or pieces of, merch or whatever. And they sort of become these snapshots of time. But we sort of are historians to a degree, too, of kind of these different facets or phases of our lives, I should say. And so it's interesting kind of thinking about this new record because, having done this podcast for a little over 5 years, it's one where it's like, when I would do the traditional, like, okay, like, tell me about the new record and and try to find interesting ways to, make that fun for you. It becomes interesting talking about something that you worked on 2 years ago and have kind of already run its course of the life for you other than now just playing it out.
Right.
But what, like the things that like right now, the things that you're going through are currently inspiring whatever you're already currently writing and that you're excited about now, but we're not going to get to hear that for probably another 1.5 to 2 years. And so we're always perpetually behind you as the artist because you're still excited about the new thing, but I'm sure you're still equally more excited about the things that you're currently coming up with that have you excited to put out the next record or start writing the next record.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I've never really thought about it like that. There's always like a 2-year lag and like, especially the way that I like to approach records with like records being yearbooks of like how, like lyrically, it's like, all right, well, here's, life over the past 2 years. You know what I mean? It's been different every record. The first record, we were all young and positive and just like, everything's going to be okay. And then, the second record was just, utter heartbreak and like so dark and emotional. And then the third record, like, we had like 2 months to do it. So we were just kind of like in this weird spot of pressure. And like, we, kind of really liked everything we've done on Deadwood, but knew that we needed to grow for ourselves and, put together that record. And then, this record we've had a 1.5 to write in the middle of one of the most devastating times in all of, entertainment industry, not let alone like all of our lives in the world, essentially. So it's crazy how that all is going to kind of come into effect. And, granted, we're still kind of in COVID, I guess. Like, it's definitely not gone away. So,
No.
And the record is not a COVID record by any means. Like, I intentionally did not want it to be like, the song titles are like quarantine, you know what I mean? And like pandemic and, stuff like epidemic and stuff like that. So it's definitely about a lot of the emotions and headspaces that were gone through in the last 1.5 or so. But I definitely did my best to not make it a COVID record.
Something as you're kind of talking about how you purposely did want to make it a record. I don't want to say inspired by, that's not really the way I want to say it. Brought on because of why you found yourself with this amount of time to write this record. Something that I've been kind of finding interesting just to kind of talk through a little bit. And, maybe for those that'll listen to this, they themselves can kind of maybe work through some things too. What is something that with the extra time that you had to, be home, what are some things that you maybe learned about yourself in this downtime to actually become a better person or a more of a who you would like to be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Obviously a lot of people had time to, dive into themselves last year, and, had a lot of alone time, which means there's a lot of time to think, which can be a blessing and a curse. And, I just kind of figured some things out about me and like being a people person. And, I'm someone that really thrives on human interaction. So you're like last year, had the potential to be a very bad year for me. Thankfully, I have roommates that are my best friends, and, my best friends all live in about a 10-mile radius. So, I think I learned a lot about myself in that, and then also that, maybe there's some things that still need to kind of be addressed. There's songs on the record about that. The first song, Relapse, is kind of about that, where it's just like thinking that you got everything, in a good spot, and then, you get this time where you're like alone, and, all of a sudden it's like all of these things that you thought you've dealt with, like, kind of come back to the surface. So, it definitely, that's a loaded question, but, I think there was a lot of things that just kind of came to the surface that was just like, maybe that's not as over as I thought it was.
Well, I think that was kind of the interesting thing is, like, something I kind of realized was really helpful for me was actually having this podcast. Like, you saw a lot more podcasts start popping up, or a lot more people getting ancillary hobbies because they just found themselves with so much time. And it was one of those, like, the one thing, and it's actually the main impetus of why I started this, was to have that connection, kind of a long form, basically, of having a conversation with somebody, because we as a society really don't do that anymore. Like, too oftentimes, like, you may not see someone for 4 months, but because of social media, you're able to see what they do all the time. So by the time you actually sit down with them, they start telling you something. You're like, yeah, I already know that. And so, like, right, you start going through this weird thing where you're like, well, I want to hang out with you, but I also know everything that's happened to you without having you tell me it or being a part of it. So how do we build a connection? How do we keep making the human connection happen? And so that was the one thing that was really nice during the pandemic for me, is I still had this as an outlet to essentially talk to people and be social. But I realized a lot of people don't have that. And that's where you started seeing a lot more people doing, Zoom, meetings and so forth, and kind of getting that connectivity back. And so I think that's been something that's been interesting to me, and kind of talking to some of, like, people like yourself that's a creative, but where maybe the creativity thrives on being with someone else in the room and just kind of tossing ideas back and forth, where maybe you've lost some of that. And then it kind of really, puts you kind of in a different headspace, or makes you kind of like you said, reevaluate just kind of what's important, what's not. Or, as I kind of learned too, the people that you thought were your ride or dies, and they don't even reach out to you, and you're like, I guess we're not as close, or our friendship isn't really as strong as I thought it was, interestingly enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of, like, kind of true colors shown last year in a way.
Sorry, swallow that water wrong. By the way, no one had told me, do you have other press right behind me at all? I just suddenly realized that.
I do not know. I can check though.
Okay, because I was like realizing, I was like, we're approaching almost a half hour, but I wanted to make sure I didn't keep you longer than I maybe should have.
Let me ask real quick. I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure. I have had that happen to me plenty of times, so I always try to be cognizant of it if I can be.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Something when talking with Maddie, because, he had talked about, and through his Instagram stories, was very vocal, I guess, or presenting that, he was working on this new home studio. And even when we had talked, I was kind of mentioning, like, having all the different friends you do that are, you know, multi-instrumentalists, write songs and so forth, you know, how is it having something, a space where you can literally just go and start writing when an idea comes into play? And, you know, like that was kind of how the Hillian song came about, as he was saying. But I would assume someone like yourself, who probably has a studio in your place as well, or at least access to Maddie's, what are some of the things that maybe you did for just fun during this pandemic that maybe isn't released yet, but might be down the road? Like, is there maybe like a solo-y kind of record, or just a collection of fun things that you've been working on that aren't going to be Wage War or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been working on solo stuff for a while. My problem is I just don't know where I want to go with it, because there's just so many different avenues and kind of songs that I've written, and, you know, styles of music that I like that I haven't really settled on like what it is yet. But I got to write with a bunch of friends last year as well. I got to write with my buddies in Lakeview. I wrote with my friend Quint. You know, got to write with some great, even like bands in this scene. You know, I got to work with Memphis on some of their new stuff, and then other stuff that I think is not announced yet. So yeah, I mean, I got to do a lot of other cool things besides Wage War last year, which was super cool. So that kind of kept me busy last year and kept me growing, you know, as an art or a songwriter more than anything.
With there being kind of the, I guess, lack of a cohesive direction, do you find that actually would inspire you a little bit more to maybe do a series of EPs or something like that? Like, and kind of a way that I'm kind of processing the question a little bit is, so the other day I saw that Halsey had tweeted that what she wants to do is create like a collection of EPs, essentially based on her already recorded output, but create them based on moods that they have kind of all fit into. So instead of it being like, here's the record, it kind of has the lulls, peaks and valleys, these 7 songs create this vibe, and we'll call it blank. Is that maybe something that with your music that you haven't released that you might be able to do, where it's like, this small collection is inspired by this, we'll call it whatever, and then just collectively release it over time to showcase the full width of what you do?
That definitely could be a cool idea. I mean, I know, you know, there's an artist, John Foreman, who used to sing for, or still is in Switchfoot. He had like a summer, winter, fall, spring EP collection that was all like the winter songs were sad, and then the, you know, kind of thing like that. So I think it's a great idea. I've just never really dove that far into it for myself yet. So I mean, I think that's a great idea. It's definitely worth exploring for sure.
I just think it's interesting, the idea of trying to do something that's a little bit different. I mean, at this point, I hate to be like the old guy that's like, oh, I've seen it all and how it has to go. But I feel like the music industry is just in this really interesting phase where, you know, you look at a band, and I constantly bring them up, but like you look at a band like Bring Me, who kind of has bucked the traditional way of releasing music, that kind of almost gone more of the pop and hip hop kind of thing, where it's like, here's an EP or a mixtape or a single even, and then you drop that, and they're very much like, yeah, this is just kind of a snapshot of right now and stuff we liked, and you may not like this one, but we'll have some come out in another couple months, and maybe you'll love that. And just being unafraid to just kind of be an artist in the truest sense, and just kind of put out as much of your art as possible.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where music's headed, and that's where I'd like to take our band too, is like more of a single format. You know, records are cool, but I just feel like they don't get the attention they deserve anymore, because everything's about playlisting, and no one's actually buying records, so no one gets to see the art, and then it's just kind of like the whole format is changing. And then if you can keep dropping singles, it's just like stay in the spotlight, where it's like, all right, well, this band put out a record and I love it, but I listened to it for 3 weeks, and now I'm looking for the next thing. And then it's like, well, if your band is always the next thing, like, it's a smart way to do it. You know, and Bring Me sense, obviously they can just do about anything and it'd be great. So, you know, they just put out like a pop, what do they call it? They called it like dark emo or something. I think there was some kind of,
yeah, something like that. Dark kind of pop, yeah.
Name. Dark. There was some kind of name that they attached to it, and it's just like everyone loves it. So it's like, all right, well, this rips. And then like that last thing they did with like Parasite Eve, which is like super heavy for them, and I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, you know, they're doing it right. And, they've always been a trendsetter for our scene, and they just continue to be that. So,
well, that's actually kind of an interesting talking point to a degree too. Is like you talk about Bring Me is still a part of your scene, and then you even have like a Day to Remember with what they just did on their last record, and they are huge, even beyond just the scene, like as far as the opportunities they get for a lot of other things, getting to tour with Blink-182 a couple years ago and kind of crossing over just like Bring Me has. Does something like that, I don't want to say gives you guys permission, but does it make you start thinking a little bit beyond your scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always been the goal, is like, like we are a heavy band, and I don't think that's anything that we're ever going to abandon, because that's what we're good at, and that's what we started. But like to have the songs that can reach new fans and new types of people, and especially with how, genres are just like not even a thing anymore. Like everyone's just kind of crossing and weaving in and out of things. Like I think that's always the goal, is to, be bigger than just a genre or subgenre. Like, is to make music that you feel is true to you and as an artist, and then also just making stuff that you want to make. You know what I mean? Like, we play. I mean, before this year, we were playing 200 or 300 shows a year, and we play the same songs every night, and like writing the same song over and over again is going to get real old real fast. So being able to have songs that are diversified and not just the same thing every record, you know what I mean, and having like the growth songs, and like if we're gonna push the heavy envelope, like finding a new way to make a song heavier, you know what I mean, like that's all stuff that's important to me, and like important to us, and like the livelihood of like staying in a band, you know what I mean.
With kind of more of your songwriting side, and I don't know if you do a lot of producing itself, are you one that like has doing what you do kind of, I don't want to say ruined music for you, but are you able to listen to it and have joy in listening to it? Or has it become a thing where you start deconstructing songs going, oh, that's really cool how they put this structure here, or they did this, or whatever. Like, are you still able to enjoy music the way you used to, for lack of a better term?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a massive music fan. I literally am always listening to music in the car, literally doing anything. I'll have my AirPods in and just listening to music. So, I think I still do like deconstruct, because I like to figure out what they're doing that I like so much. But no, I'm still a big music lover, and I still definitely get that magic feeling a lot. So
it's funny because like having been in a few different facets of the industry, whether it be, having been in a band like for a little bit, but then booking shows was great until I saw too much behind the curtain. And now when I go to shows, I'm like, all right, so this is an 1,800 cap room, roughly at this cost, package tour probably costs this, the venue, like, I'm breaking down all the numbers, and it's just like, that sucks. Like, I wish I didn't have that knowledge or that brain in me to do it that way. So sometimes I wonder if the adverse is the same. I having friends that tour, a lot of times they're like, I don't go to shows. I don't really like listening to music really beyond certain bands that I used to listen to before I was in these bands. And so it's just kind of interesting to hear that, everyone's like, oh, the dream is always to tour and to do all these things. But I think the talking point that a lot of people don't really bring up is sometimes it ruins sort of your fandom of the thing that you were so passionate about that it made you start your own band. So I always kind of find that to be an interesting talking point on occasion.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the live show thing definitely, like, once you've seen behind the curtain, like, it can be a little hard to get that fire back. But I mean, we still, I can still go to a show and feel the magic for sure. It's just kind of about the perspective and mindset that you walk in with.
Absolutely. That's a good point. I'm trying to remember. It's weird because I try not to bring up like social media stuff too much, because some of that becomes a little outdated after the fact. But just try to remember. You're a football fan, aren't you? Or no?
No, I'm not. I mean, I'll watch it, but it's not my thing.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you were, and were a Titans fan or whatever. And I was about to be like, man, like this season's kind of been really interesting already, like just with a lot of stuff that's been going on. But I'll save you the talk of sport you're not into. I guess it kind of been wrapping up a little bit though. With this tour, I've that show in Atlanta was my fourth show. The only other events I'd really gone to were a festival here in GR that had Rob Zombie and stuff of that nature. Then going to the Chicago Kanye West listening event for Donda, and then Knocked Loose at a small club, and then basically you guys at the Masquerade. And what's been interesting in kind of slowly getting back into going to live shows and kind of having experienced the big festival, a stadium size show, and then going to a small club, and then kind of that in between spot that, your tour is hitting. It's been interesting to just kind of see how everyone's kind of getting reacclimated to everything. And I've kind of been asking slightly to some of the people who are back on the road, how has it been for you guys kind of getting reacclimated? I know a lot of tours are basically in a bubble. You guys don't really get to possibly even interact with the other bands that you're on tour with. So how has this experience been for you in light of being home for basically a year and having to kind of essentially quarantine at home, but now doing it on the road as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an adjustment period for it, and it's kind of the price you paid for, for being able to do this again. And I think that anyone would gladly pay it, you know what I mean, to be able to have music back. So it's definitely like a new normal, and I hope that it won't always be this way, but if this is what we need to do to keep shows going now, like I'm definitely here for it. And it's kind of different every day on restrictions and mandates and things like that, so it's just kind of rolling with the punches and figuring out what the deal is. But I mean, it's definitely been a blast. But like I said, it's certainly not the same, but we're out here making the most of it for sure.
And as kind of trying to figure out my way through this, because I feel like going out on the road, the whole kind of perk of being on the road is essentially getting to see and experience all these things, sort of as we were talking about earlier. And I feel like going out on the road and having to be confined to basically your group, your group, and then not really getting to do much else, I feel like would just be a really interesting way to tour. Like, I feel like it takes away a lot of what makes touring. What's been one of the more interesting things of traversing this, being one of the first bands out? Like, are you getting hit up by a lot of other peers that are like, hey, how are you guys doing this? You basically made it the whole tour, knock on wood, no cancellations, no issues. Are you having to give a lot of advice, or maybe just, how to navigate this, since you're one of the pioneers kind of, I guess, of going back to touring?
Yeah, definitely. We've definitely been hit up by quite a few bands that are now out on the road, but kind of waiting to see how we did it. Obviously, we have 4 shows left, and again, knock on wood, I think everything looks like the tour will have done a full completed run, which is awesome. So yeah, I mean, we've definitely been hit up about how we did things, and it seemingly has worked. So maybe we're history books, you know what I mean?
What are you looking forward to most? I know a lot of people were anxious to get back on the road. Do you have that same feeling that a lot of people do when a tour is done, where you're like, I'm ready to go back home, ready to, like, do you still have that same feelings as you normally would, or are you just champing at the bit to basically just stay out on the road since you've been home for so long?
It's kind of a double-edged sword. I left my house on July 31st, so I've been gone for almost 2 months, having the best time on this tour, and this is legitimately one of our favorite tours we've ever done. But I am definitely excited to sleep in a stationary bed and eat a home-cooked meal, and kind of be able to live life again. You know what I mean?
What is there a go-to meal when you're done, like on your last day of tour, you get home? Is there like a go-to spot or meal that you're like, all right, I've been waiting for, counting down the days till I can get this? Like, what is it?
I mean, for me, it's going to be when Matt throws a brisket on the Traeger. That's going to be it for me. I know he said that you got something. I don't remember if it was a grill or if you got a smoker or something when we talked, but did you bring anything out on the road with you to kind of
do that on the road at least to kind of have a little bit of a sense of camaraderie?
We didn't, but Beartooth has one of those like mini Blackstones, so we've been grilling up feasts on that for sure.
I feel like it's interesting to kind of see like that one thing that I feel like Warped Tour was really big on, which is the community and even doing those, nightly barbecues and so forth. That I feel like it's cool to see some of you guys now kind of bringing that onto tours, where I don't really feel like maybe that was a thing that some of the older generation of bands was kind of doing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of it's an outside activity that you can do after a show and hang out with the other bands, and it's not like everyone's up on each other's buses and stuff. It's kind of, outside. We brought cornhole with us, and then, they have the grill. So between that, we just have a good old time.
Well, thank you again for taking the time. Is there anything you would like to plug online or anything to kind of wrap up?
New album, Man, comes out October 1st. We're really, really proud of it. And we've got 3 singles out right now: High Horse, Circle the Drain, and Teeth. You can find them all wherever you decide to listen to music from. And thank you for having me.
By the way, you just reminded me of something. Did anyone else think that you had covered that Katy Perry song by chance?
Yeah, a lot of people did. And then someone asked us if Circle the Drain was a Machine Head cover. I was like, no.
Yeah, they do have a song
called that.
I forgot about it, but I always thought of the Katy Perry song from whatever record that was on. I mean, I could totally see you pulling out a
Drain, Katy Perry.
Yeah, the Circle of the Drain by Katy Perry.
Yeah, I'm starting to lose you on the service end, but we probably will never do the pop cover and the metal cover thing. That's not our bag.
Well, I mean, that would be a really interesting one to do, since it's it was a really far departure for her sonically. It was a pretty gnarly song.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Cody, thanks again for taking the time. Looking forward to seeing you in about, what is it going to be, about like 5 days? 4 days? 25th, I think, is when you're here.
It'll be about 4 days, man.
Yeah, awesome.
Looking for sure.
Looking forward to it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right.
So that was my conversation with Cody from Wage War. Once again, they have their new record, Manic, out now. It was a lot of fun getting to kind of just shoot the shit with Cody for a little bit, getting to talk about some, travel spots you like to eat at, just kind of working your way through kind of the pandemic, basically, that we all went through, and just kind of hopefully growing as a person and kind of coming out the other side of it a little bit better than how you went into it. I know, as I kind of joked in the chat, a lot of people were, trying to maybe put unrealistic expectations on what to do through the pandemic. I'm going to work out more. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to do, essentially manage this time that everyone suddenly now all has within theory. And I think that kind of maybe set some goals to where, we look at it almost as a failure if you didn't come out of it like 30 pounds lost, or I acquired a new skill, or got to finally renovate my house or whatever. And I think at the end of the day, as long as you're kind of able to say that even if you didn't necessarily do anything in that time that you would necessarily deem productive or a growth, that even if you kind of were able to go, I realize there's some problems and I'm kind of working on it still, I think that is still a valuable, and I think that's still valuable, and I do think that actually is an improvement versus when you were at the beginning of everything. So the fact that it sounds like Cody kind of took some time to reflect on some of the issues that he wanted to work on, and is seemingly doing a lot better on the other side of it, I think speaks volumes to just kind of the person that he is, and the strength that he has as a person. So definitely want to thank Cody for taking the time, and definitely looking forward to seeing what comes out of Cody. I know it's kind of funny, seeing him and Maddie constantly, obviously being neighbors and friends and all that kind of stuff, working together on various music. I know, with the new Wage War record, I know Maddie said he kind of helped write something probably with Cody. I know Cody had said when the new Memphis Mayfire stuff has been coming out that, he's been working with Maddie. Obviously, Cody working with a lot of other people down there in Nashville. So just really interested to kind of see what comes out of Cody's songwriting in the near future, and maybe we'll get a solo record, and be very interesting to see what that even sounds like. So to kind of start wrapping this episode up, if you would like to keep up with Cody, it is simple enough. It's Cody Quistad on Instagram and Twitter. If you would like to keep up with Wage War, even simpler, you can go to Wage War on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or wagewarband.com. Pick up the record or CD or merch or whatever it is you would like to do to support the band. I'm sure it would be greatly appreciated. I don't know that they're going to be doing any more touring. I don't see anything necessarily on their socials indicating that they're going to be going out anymore this year. They just, like I said, wrapped up that Beartooth tour that actually, very surprisingly, had no canceled date. That was actually a point of pride from Caleb during the last set here in town, was the fact that they made it through the whole tour without having to cancel anything, no one getting sick, no nothing. So, I mean, we're starting to kind of see, a lot of these bands doing runs and not having any issues. So it is one of those where I'm hoping that maybe that's a huge step in the right direction to being able to go see a lot more shows, a lot more bands touring, international bands started being able to come here to the States and so forth, and festival touring and so forth, being able to become back to what it was. I know as someone who loves going to concerts, that's huge news for me, so I'm very much looking forward to those things. And speaking of things I love and support and all those kind of things, if you would like to keep up with the podcast, it's simple enough. BrewSpeakPod.com is your landing page. We actually recently switched over where the podcast originates. It was over on SoundCloud. Now it's over on Anchor FM. So if you were subscribed over there, go to Anchor FM. Otherwise, it should be everywhere else it always was. Nothing really should have changed, but thank you for your support. Also want to thank all the patrons. Want to thank Sarah Schneider, Craig Kent, Mark Tagg for subscribing and, keeping me afloat over here with some friends over on the Patreon side. I do a lot of stuff over there, and it just makes me feel really good that people are supporting what I'm doing and all the extra content over there. So for as little as $1, you can kind of go check out some of the other stuff we do. $3, one of the things you get access to is basically all the audio before the episodes drop. $5 a month gets you all the video and everything below, and then at the $10 tier, you get access to everything, as well as a monthly Patreon hangouts that we will do. It's a lot of fun. Haven't gotten to do one on the internet, but I have gotten to hang out with a few people in person and have some beers. So those are always fun, getting to hang out with people and just kind of shoot the shit. So if that sounds like something you'd be into, go to Patreon, check it out. And last but not least, also support our podcast sponsors. Run through them again real quickly. The Bean Bastard. Head on over to thebeanbastard.com. Pick up some delicious coffee. I can't wait to go to Buffalo in a few months and go try some of the stuff from the source. Get to see the beans as they're being hand roasted and all that kind of stuff. On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point. Use our code BSP15 and take 15% off your total purchase order. And last but not least is rockability.com, where they have over 500,000 items in their online store. Don't have to worry about the integrity or the quality of the products because they are all officially licensed through the bands. Use our code BREWtally and take 10% off your total purchase order. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I'll talk to you all next week, where our guest is Johannes from Avatar. That was a good one. I'll talk to you then.
Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks, but you knew what you were getting into. It will result in less listens. You're gonna see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you, don't use this fucking riff. It sucks. Bum.